My guest is the founding editor of Experience Life Magazine. She's also a nationally recognized healthy living expert, and we have her here. She is Pilar Gerasmino. Welcome, Pilar.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
It is great to have you in studio. I really thought this was a good topic for any Sunday, but especially for those of us who celebrate Easter, for Easter Sunday, which is such a time of rebirth, renewal, and love and peace, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a perfect opportunity. And a chance when people are actually home for the day and maybe have a chance to kind of calm their pace down a little bit and think about something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. And that's kind of what this is about, just so we have some of the definitions out there. Mindfulness. How should we think about that word?
Well, people define it very differently, but generally I think it's accepted that it's about being in a present moment kind of awareness, having a sort of gentle attention on your own thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and being in a less reactive, more conscious space. It's a lot of verbiage, but basically it comes down to being calm enough and centered enough that you have a thoughtful, choiceful moment between whatever happens and the thing that you do next.
You know, a colleague of mine who's actually going to be in later sent me an email this morning, which I thought was so nice. And he said, I'm not going to be in studio while Pilar is there, but I so look forward to listening to the podcast later because he's saying kind of needs this in his life right now. Yeah. So I don't know exactly what he might be talking about, but I was really happy that we're also here for him.
That's
right?
so true. Yeah.
It is. There are so many things that stress us out, and I want to help us preview your May issue. And you've got an article in there called "The Power of Kindness," which by Elizabeth Millard, which I found really fascinating. And you talk about these micro moments of connection with others, and how a lot of times we're running around in this perpetual state of rushing and chaos.
Yeah, it's nuts, right? We don't even have the consciousness of other people being people. You know, one of the points that we made in this piece was that we start perceiving other people as obstacles. And it's like the opposite of kindness and the opposite of consciousness, where someone gets in our way and they're just a thing to be moved past or gotten around. And we wrote this article in part because we've been developing a really lovely collection, I think, of articles about mindfulness and meditation and consciousness. But I think it sometimes helps to get a focus in on a particular state of mind or a particular situation. And this piece, The Power of Kindness, that's in our May issue, is a really lovely way of putting your attention on other people as a way, selfishly, of serving yourself. That it makes the point that we really benefit psychologically, biochemically, neurologically from this state of having kindness, focused attention on other people.
Yeah, so in this piece, Experience Life, the writers and the editors are saying when you're kind to others, it can actually be helpful for you and good for you. And they have some different ways to cultivate kindness. I thought it was interesting, Pilar, that your writers say it's not necessarily a destination, but it's a habit that we're building. So not to think of kindness as an achievement, but it's an awareness and a practice that we're growing. What does that mean?
Well, I love that word practice for two reasons. One, it's funny, people always talk about having a meditation practice, but many people are really challenged to sit down on a little cushion on a daily basis, and people get really frustrated. They're like, my mind wanders, I can't do that without getting frustrated, which is the opposite of what you want to experience. But there is a practice, in other words, practicing doing something over and over again really helps rewire us neurologically. There's a lot of brain science that shows us the more we do something, whatever that thing is, the more our brain gets rewired to do that thing. So this says basically it's not about one kind act or a particular charitable thing that you need to do, but looking for opportunities on a daily basis to be a little kinder, to be a little more patient, to be a little less reactive and a little bit more compassionate with yourself and others, establishes a habitual patterning behavior that ends up benefiting you in every way possible. And I mean, the science around this is extraordinary. This is not just a touchy-feely, feel-good thing. This is really a strategy for anti-aging, anti-stress, anti-anxiety. It lowers inflammation. It improves immunity. And so we really tried to, in the article, set out a bunch of different ways, little momentary interventions that you can do. And some of them are really interesting. I thought this one was odd, putting your hand on your heart.
That was the first one I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, I read that the first time, and I'm like, oh, this is just nonsense. My goodness, putting my hand on my heart. But it makes the point that gesture is patterned in to us as I'm feeling something, and you connect with your emotional, compassionate self. It's a side point. They've made this interesting research discovery that people who get Botox injections and can't frown oftentimes feel less upset and depressed as a result of this. Now, I'm not suggesting Botox injections for everybody, but this is a kind of similar intervention that when you make a gesture or can't make a gesture, your body, mind, physiology, neurology, biochemistry connect with that gesture or lack of gesture, and you take on that state. So putting your hand on your heart is a way when you're having a conversation with someone or just choosing to be less reactive. I might be suddenly annoyed with my little sister and I'm about to say something mean or frustrating, and I can put my hand on my heart and I'm just likely to speak with more compassion and patience and empathy than I would otherwise.
And I can imagine if you are getting furious and steamed up, your heart might be really beating.
Yes.
So just putting your hand on your heart reminds you that you're not in a calm place.
Yes, it's a self-soothing gesture.
Right. And so that is one of the tips in the May issue of Experience Life Magazine. I'm talking to the magazine's founding editor, Pilar Gerasmino, and taking your calls and texts for her, 818-07-651-989-9226, as well as 866-989-9226. So definitely, if you have a question for her, or if you've practice this kind of mindfulness and kindness and you've had some good results, I would love for you to share that with us. You also talk about in the article, Pilar, that we kind of have a negativity bias, which favors cautious, fear-based thoughts over generous, positive ones.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little.
Well, this kind of goes back to our ancestry and the way that our DNA has created our wiring. But you think about survival of the fittest. We came to our humanity through an environment that was basically fairly dangerous. Predators, things happening to us without a lot of protection available to us. So we survived by being highly cautious and being afraid a lot of the time. Like the more afraid, the more alert, the more hypervigilant we are, the more we're likely to notice impending dangers and be ready to escape from them. This is like the why zebras don't get ulcers thing. This is about how our stress response is wired up. So from the point of view of an immediate survival situation, fear can be very productive and hypervigilance can be very productive. But on a daily basis, on a chronic, ongoing basis, if we are using this preferred fear state, which is a survival mechanism, as our default state for responding to everyday experiences, it's what makes us impatient. It's what makes us desperate. It's what puts us into a scarcity mindset.
Or like when you can't get that parking spot.
Yes, exactly. And we're like, oh, something bad is happening. And we don't even really know what it is we're afraid of in many cases, but our judgments come up. That person is a bad, nasty person and they're in my way. Again, obstacle thinking. And it sets up a what I call an inflammatory mindset. Every time we have a thought or feeling, our body and brain basically release a cascade of chemicals, hormones, things like cortisol and adrenaline, for example, are released whenever we have a stressful thought or feeling. Our heart rate changes, our brain waves change. So this, again, is the scientific reality that you are your thoughts and feelings. And if you have this reactive, stressed out, short fuse mindset that may have served our ancestors well for survival, but you have it on a regular basis, you're creating this inflammatory mindset that can imbalance your biochemistry, the gut biology, and everything, even your telomeres, your aging, can be advanced dramatically by holding that state on a regular basis. It increases your risk of heart disease, for example.
Lots of negative results, but there are some positive things you can do and move your brain, teach your brain. We'll get into that. We're going to take a break and then more with Pilar. But I want to specifically ask her when we come back, and I'm sure all of you out there can be helped by this, how do we bring this to our real lives, our real workplaces, our real families? Easter dinner tonight, when maybe that relative is there that you really have challenges showing some kindness to. We'll get into that when we return.
WCCO.com.
Roshini Rajkumar back with you. Have you been kind to someone today? Hopefully you don't have to think about it too much, but you know what? It's a busy world. It's kind of a an overloaded schedule we lead. And hopefully on Sunday you can take a little break if you celebrate Easter. Happy Easter. And hopefully you're enjoying some time today with your family. Thanks for spending part of your day with me. I'm talking with Pilar Gerasmino. She is a nationally recognized healthy living expert, author of A Manifesto for Thriving in a Mixed Up World. She is also founding editor of Experience Life Magazine. And Pilar, before we went to break, we were talking about how can people take mindfulness and kindness to their real lives, their families, their friends, their workplaces.
Yes. Well, I think one of the first things is to recognize how rushing, which is a constant state for us, works against mindfulness. It's basically the opposite state. You need that moment of response versus automatic reaction in order to attain anything resembling mindfulness. So if you're in a constantly rushed state, we actually had a quiz, sort of a self-assessment in our kindness feature that looked at some of the kind of the typical behaviors that go along with or negate a kindness-focused attitude. Rushing is one of the most deadly anti-kindness mechanisms. So the first thing I recommend to people is look for opportunities to slow down. We were talking before about patterned behavior. Most of us rush so much and so habitually that we very rarely move at anything resembling.
That's like what our brain
pace.
knows now.
Yes, absolutely. You get out of your car to walk, you walk as fast as you can. So it might be when you look for opportunities to just consciously slow yourself down a little bit, slowing down your rate of speaking when you're talking to someone, your rate of walking, your rate of eating. Anytime you can practice slowness, you're going to get yourself into a rhythm of life that allows you to respond versus react. So that's one really simple intervention. The other thing that I suggest is putting away electronics. You know, most of us are constantly on our phones. And again, think about reactivity. Bing, you've got something. Zing, someone likes you. You know, someone's commented on the last thing that you did. And so we have these constant interventions into our natural mind state. They become our natural mind state, basically, of like, what else? What's going to happen next? And we're always waiting for the next. It is a complete frenzy. And it fractures our attention away from the people we're with, the environments we're in. So again, it's a total lack of consciousness and a lack of mindfulness. Obviously, most of us are very dependent on our smartphones and other electronic devices, but having no electronic zones, the dinner table is a really popular one for a lot of people. The bedroom for many couples, they leave their electronics outside, and I think that's a brilliant way to relate to the person in front of you rather than
and even if that partner isn't there, just to not have electronics in the bedroom.
Absolutely.
I mean, the lights from those screens and things like that. Try reading.
Yes.
You know, try some meditation, perhaps. Right?
Yes, right. And being thoughtful about the kinds of inputs you have into your brain and your body at any given point is huge. Breathing is probably the most powerful intervention. We have two different states neurologically. Our nervous systems are kind of divided into a sympathetic nervous system, which is commonly known as our fight or flight nervous system. The other is called our parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the nervous response that governs relaxation, connection, digestion, healing. Totally different biochemical states. But we are, as I mentioned earlier, kind of chronically in a low-grade fight or flight situation, a sympathetic response by default in the way that we live every day because of the rushing and everything else. The only conscious intervention we have to switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic is our breathing. So we can even experiment now and ask listeners to try with us just the simple act of taking 3 deep breaths. If we breathe in for, say, 4 counts, hold that for a second, and then release it more slowly, say to a count of 5.
I've been breathing this deeply the whole time she's been talking, and it does feel better. It feels really good. Pilar, we have like 30 seconds left with you. I know you're working on a new book.
Yeah.
Please give our listeners a sneak peek.
Sure. The title is The Art of Being Healthy in an Unhealthy World, and it's an evolution of the work I've done in the past with Experience Life and RevolutionaryAct.com. I'm thinking about it as a kind of 24-hour guide to living the life of a healthy person and how to do that even in the face of pretty daunting obstacles. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Well, great. Well, we'll have to have you back when that comes out. Thank you so much for talking kindness and mindfulness with us today and sharing some of your piece here in our studio. We really appreciate that. And you can, of course, find the magazine and Pilar on Twitter. She tweets at P. Gerasmino and the magazine at Experience Life. So go check those out on Twitter and their websites. And of course, the magazine, the May issue, coming up with the kindness article. We're going to take a quick break for